4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to another episode of the Ready Set Pwn podcast, your premier source for everything to do with the Vancouver Titans. I am Chris at Lightforce, as usual, joining virtually with Sam at another Sam Chan. Missing in action today is Omni at Omni Strife. We'll get into it, but he is currently assisting with his cat, Jack, who had to go under the knife. But it is a light week, so we thought we could talk a little bit about Jack and the payload, because what else might we talk about?
Feel bad for Jack.
Yeah,
Been there, my friend.
But the topic that I wanted to sort of get into, straight off the top here, has to do with everything that we're currently seeing take place, I would say south of the border, but even, up here in Canada, but around the world. And that is what, quite frankly, was a murder of Mr. Floyd and everything that's taken place since then. Sam, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I can speak from my position. I need to acknowledge I was born very lucky. I was born white. I was born male. And I've lived a life based on those two irrefutable facts that has been easier than many other people. And the fact that someone can lose their life having been accused of, using a counterfeit $20 bill I don't understand how that is even possible, especially in this day and age. And it's just unsettling to see how there are far too many people that think that someone losing their life is somehow okay. Like, it's not. And we talked before we hit record whether or not we would actually have an episode this week, because it's an extremely difficult time. And the last thing that I feel people need to care about is the Overwatch League, our feelings, the Vancouver Titans. But then there's another part of me that also wonders if us, providing the opportunity, one, to acknowledge what is just a senseless act, and then the subsequent result, which I'm completely in support of. Something needs to change, and that change needs to be affected in due order. In fact, it's well overdue. But then I also acknowledge that I'm, as I've talked about, someone who suffered from anxiety. And for me, routine and structure can provide me some of that escape. So that's what I sort of want this episode to be, an opportunity for us to focus on something, to recharge, so that we can get out there and do what's necessary. But Sam, any thoughts that you can share on the matter?
No, I really appreciate you saying all of that, right? I think it's for what I'd say, and now I'm speaking on behalf of people, but I think for most people, we've had a pretty difficult weekend. I think for a lot of us, it was enlightening. A lot of us, it was eye-opening, and a lot of us, we realize, our own flaws. And I feel like that's something really powerful that's missing in society today, is the ability for us to admit when we're wrong about something, that we need to learn something, right? When we're talking about Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, like that discussion, me from a safe place of looking at it, and I need to acknowledge that too, like that is a fascinating discussion that needs to happen, why it's one versus the other. And we're not a political podcast. We talk about video games, but we're also human beings, right? And so for you to start off this episode like that, I think speaks volumes to what RSP I think stands for. We've always been inclusive. We've always encouraged positivity. And I think it's fair to say from my perspective of being a co-host, I'm proud to be here because this isn't something that we whipped up because we want to hop on a trend. This is the well played everyone is goes into the cruxes of what we believe we should be doing as our duties as gamers, as content creators, as human beings. Mm-hmm. And so, like, if you guys are listening to us, I think there's also a lot of very valuable voices that need to be heard this week, and I encourage you guys to do so. There's so many very smart people in our community, outside our community, that are sharing so many different resources, so many donation places, people much smarter than us. So I'd love for you to search these people out. But from where I stand, like I'm very much similar to you. I think with all the things that have been happening with COVID-19, we see more prejudice against Asians for reasons that I won't go into, because again, I'm not trying to make this my story. It's not my story. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think I was given a hint of what it feels like to be Black every single day, every single second, right? And I'm only worried about this very split moment in time. So for me to just shut up and try and empathize with what that feels like, I think that's taken a lot of wind out of, I can speak for both my wife and I, our weekend. Not because it's a trendy thing to do, not because our favorite celebrities are posting on Instagram or anything like that. But this is a hard thing to take and accept. And I just want to encourage people, even if you guys don't listen to the rest of this episode, like it doesn't really matter. We got no Overwatch games to talk about. There's nothing important. Let me just put it that way. Yeah. But if you also, as part of the Overwatch community, you're looking for relief, you're looking for a break, you're looking, for, like you mentioned, normacy and routine. Like, we'll try our best to provide that for you outside of, Jack, poor Jack, yeah. Which we will talk about in a second, but I'm 100% with you.
Yeah, one of the things that we've tried to allow for is a conversation in an RSP Discord. I know there are a few of our community members that have gone out and supported the community, ensuring that voices are heard. And I feel that's a very important aspect of what, you know, we as a society need to do. Like this one, things need to change. You know, the topic you had sort of brought up, whereas this conversation about Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. If all lives truly matter, Black lives need to matter first, and it is very apparent that they don't. It doesn't. It's a chain, and you know, you've heard this saying: a chain is as strong as its weakest link. Well, you know, people who simply based on the color of their skin are somehow, you know, hammered down constantly. That makes us as a society less. And I feel that, you know, for me, I want my daughter to grow up in a society that change has taken place. And again, we're not looking for RSP to become a political podcast. We are not experts. There are much smarter people out there. But, you know, if you need someone to talk to, I mean, both of us would be willing to hear you out. Like I am becoming more and more cognizant that is my time to listen. And I need to do what I can to change, because I come from a position of privilege, because as I had said, I was born white and I was born male. And simply based on genetics or whatever it might be, I've been given an advantage, and I've never truly understood how strong an advantage it is. So if it's upon me to help raise others up, I need to do a better job and become just a better ally.
For sure.
The podcast itself, I mean, we are going to talk about Overwatch related topics and what have you, but you're going to find it's probably going to be a somber one, because I mean, myself, I'm much more concerned with what's going on in the world today. We'll talk a little bit about it in the payload. I had shared some feelings from the RSP account late last week, and then over the course of the weekend, you know, looked back and said, you know, quite frankly, what I was sharing feelings about, not all that important in the grand scheme of things. There are much bigger issues. So I think what we'll do is we'll you know, focus on what we can, and provide anyone that opportunity, be it a short opportunity, to simply, you know, get back to those things that can, you know, bring some light to what can be a very troubling time. So, without any further ado, let's go into the payload.
Moving the payload. Join me.
So in our show notes, I wrote all's quiet-ish on the Titans front, and I wasn't necessarily going to suggest that there should be much more activity and action. I mean, we are in a lull period as defined by the Overwatch League. That's not to suggest there isn't other things going on in Overwatch itself, but from a Vancouver Titans perspective, there hasn't been a whole lot of activity or action. The one thing, though, actually, there's two things, but the one thing that happened was for those of us who had purchased homestand tickets. The Vancouver Titans sent us I don't want to call it a thank you card, but a card that, if you were watching our live stream right now, looks a lot like this. It's actually a very stylish card. It's got the Yeti on the front, the Vancouver skyline. It says Founder. And inside, a somewhat personalized message that, again, on the stream is probably backwards, but the message itself, personalized, I say somewhat, it has my name on it, my first name, as I had entered it in when I ordered the tickets. And it talks about how this sort of past, you know, few weeks, months has been a difficult time with obviously the pandemic and the situation that took place with the Titans, and the fact that we're looking at a new roster. And from a perspective of what other teams are doing, it's actually quite a bit more, even though it's a simple card. So I have to applaud the Vancouver Titans for doing something. But the difficulty that I also have, and again, these are sort of the feelings that I expressed on Twitter, is how hard would it have been to have someone write a short note just to, acknowledge, like, whether it's, us at RSP, myself, yourself, Sam, Ani, or others within the community, whether it be Jesse or Katrina or Marcus or Colin or Kevin, or really anyone within the community that's been there, Michael, about things that we've done to try to move the Force of Nature family forward. It costs time and ink, and that didn't occur. And as far as an example is concerned, like, you look at the Dallas Fuel, the president and CEO of the Fuel just wrote a quick sentence acknowledging particular things that individuals did. And it's that small kindness that goes a long way. Like, I don't need Titan swag. I'm never going to say no to, obviously. But it's that personal stuff, the more genuine interaction, that I think provides a much stronger service and benefit from an organizational perspective. Even if it was Tim Holloway, who I know many who listen to our podcast within the community with the scene are like, didn't want Tim to sign it because, right or wrong, he's not seen in a positive light. But still, the fact that, the team acknowledges that something like that would be beneficial, it's a missed opportunity in my books.
Mm-hmm. I guess it bothers you a bit more than it bothers me, is because I never would have expected that, I guess. And I think that's where I see the Titans, where I see the organization, their corporate structure, right? And I think the difficulty with fans and supports and the divide is corporately, things definitely happen differently. But esports is still very much a grassroots movement. It's all about personal touch. It's all about not the many that you've talked to, but making the few special. Because, like, don't make no mistakes about it. Anybody that's, an avid follower of the Overwatch League right now, like, they are pioneers, right? How esports will grow depends on this relatively small group of people. Whether, when we're talking globally, yes, it could be 500,000, 1 million people, whatever, but globally, 1 million people in 6 billion, not a big number, right? So like, wherever it goes, it depends a lot on this group of people. Whereas when you take a lot of things like traditional sports, like, the reason that hockey was passed down to you and was passed down to me has a lot to do with our community, our culture, and where we grew up. The 18 other buddies in my first grade class talked about the Canucks, so I became a fan also, right? Like, that doesn't happen in esports, right? That it depends on the Sams and the Chris's and the Katrinas to actually go out and actively go, like, yo, are you watching the Titans match this Saturday? Like, you better be. It's really good fun, right? Like, that's the state of the ecosystem right now. And so, like, you're right in that it's a missed opportunity, but I think we've banged this nail on the head so many times. And, like, it's really funny you mentioned Tim, because I actually like Tim a lot as a person. I think he's a positive guy. He's an energetic guy. I feel like a lot of times he's been put he's the wrong guy for the wrong position.
Yeah, but I mean, he's also the name and the face,
and he's the name and the face, right? Yeah. So that bears responsibility. So I'm not cutting him slack, but like, I just think that, like, maybe CSC should have entered esports at a more mature time. Like, that is just using the wrong method for the wrong time, place in where we are at the ecosystem, right? And, like, it's funny you mentioned that, because at my day job, we do events, we sell tickets, and we have partners and speakers and media for those tickets. And I have written 5 straight years, not just me, by the way. I do a very, very little amount, so I'm not trying to take credit. But I have done my fair share of handwritten letters. So it doesn't take a lot of time. No, they aren't super personalized messages. We write their name. We have a template. If you know the person personally, maybe a word or two. But when you're writing 300 letters, it's difficult. Not gonna lie. But like, it's very possible.
Yeah, and that's, I think, for me, and I don't mean to belabor the point, because you're right. Is it something that we should have expected? No. And I probably didn't. But I'm still waiting for, I think, the Vancouver Titans to exceed the expectations that I think many of us in the community have. And these expectations are a very low bar, right? Like,
yeah,
if they had written, hey, Chris, thank you so much, Tim. I would have been like, wow, this is a sign that things are improving. Like, it's a small little thing, but it would have been carried with it a significant amount of weight. And on your note as well, like, the few times I've talked to Tim Holloway, and I quite enjoy the conversations. I think he's actually a really good guy as well. Like, I don't hold any ill will. But then the other point you raise is, that maybe the Vancouver Titans needed to enter esports in a different point in time when their sort of maturity was there. I mean, it's only last week that we had Adam, join us from Oractive Media. And for those of you who listened to that episode, I think it's quite clear that Adam and OAM have a really strong understanding of the esports scene. Yes, they may not have had the amount of success that they may have wanted for the Toronto Defiant specifically, but they understood what they needed to do, a plan that they looked to execute, and ultimately are able to go and interact with their community and establish that community in ways that we can only imagine or dream of here in Vancouver. I mean, it's unfortunate as it might be. It's just that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, and I think a lot of credit goes to Adam is they are learning and Overactive Media is evolving, right? He openly admits that, they weren't this from day one, right? Like, they didn't call us the day, or maybe we're the wrong example because, we're a Titans podcast, but they didn't call our buddies over at CA Overwatch on day one, right? They went through their own lessons and they realized, hey, like, community is important, content is important. We can, for lack of a better term, use these avenues to further whatever their agendas are, right? Yeah. And so like that's to their credit that they are growing and understanding what it means to be a successful org. Are they there yet? No. But are the Titans there yet? No. So it's all about, like, I think an interesting part when we look back at this 3 years from now, 5 years from now is we are journaling the Titans journey, right? The highs, the lows, and all the crap in between. And right now we're at a low point. Well, I'd say a couple of weeks ago we were at the lowest point, and now we're one step removed from that. Now we get to talk about Minecraft and whatever.
Yeah. Well, and we probably will at some point. We still got a couple more weeks to go before Overwatch League action resumes.
Gotta save that.
Yeah. Speaking of low points, just this past weekend, an article on Dexerto.com, penned by Richard Lewis, was shared, and he wrote a very balanced and thoughtful article on a lot of the issues that the Vancouver Titans faced over the course of last year and leading into this season. Nothing that I would say you haven't already heard from us, and I'm not trying to pump our own tires here, but I acknowledge that there are many people out there that, one, don't know about RSP and therefore don't listen to our podcast. Maybe podcasts aren't for them, and that's perfectly fine. But things that I did sort of gather from the article were really how the strain between the players themselves and the team, happened to be. We knew there was some, but we didn't maybe fully understand the length of time that strain had existed, and the impact that it was having essentially in the relationship. One of the things that he goes on to say, based on the sources, was that the Vancouver Titans, sort of from an organizational perspective, and let's talk sort of the business side, they had made a decision to move on to another roster prior to the departure of the current one. I'm not going to suggest that that's incorrect. I don't think it is. In fact, from a business perspective, we sort of, heard this in the interview with Adam, where the Toronto Defiant sort of iterated with different purposes, and maybe it's that the Vancouver Titans just had horrible timing. They decided they need to change things. So, if you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. Again, it's probably not going to shed any new light, but it provides some context, and I think supports a lot of what we've been saying all along. And again, at the end of the day, this was a relationship between a roster and an organization that soured. It was, as I've described in the past, a divorce. And when it comes to a divorce, there's often fault on all the parties involved. I think that's still the case here. I don't think the players should get off scot-free, but I'm not suggesting it's like a percentage of assignment where it's 60 organization, 40 players. No, organizationally, the Vancouver Titans weren't ready. And that's just reality. And I think they've learned some lessons, some of which have been very hard lessons over the course of what's really been a year and a half. Right? So, what we've seen them go through, other organizations have probably been able to experience over a much longer period of time. And the sad part is there's probably going to be some other rough patches as well. These growing pains occur, and so long as they learn from these mistakes, I guess that's all we can hope for. But it's a difficult thing as a fan and as a community for us to sort of suffer through when that's all there is. And I think that's the tough part.
Yeah, and I don't know what's getting over me this week. I don't know, maybe it's emotions or something. But to talk about the Defiant for not the first time, but the second time in the show, like, we forget that they went through, in many cases, a very similar thing where they had an all-Korean to almost all-Korean roster, and they wiped it, right? They made an executive decision that their players need to communicate in English, that they need to be English first, not ethnicity, but just that is how they were going to communicate amongst one another, amongst the staff and everybody else, and to the fans, etc. But that was a hard and expensive lesson for them, right? And it was also an expensive lesson for us, and even more so because of the runaway pedigree, because of the success of the Titans. But it's the same lesson, right? So as much crap that I want to give the Titans org itself, like, they are not the only team to learn this lesson. They are not the only team that hasn't figured it out. Yeah. Well, how far they've learned and how far they're going to come from this, like, that's very much debatable.
The Florida Mayhem.
Florida Mayhem, right? Like, they went the other way. They swerved, right? Like, it's not that long ago that Mayhem, or Misfits rather, they insisted on all EU or all, I don't know what they called it back then, all Western roster. For lack of a better term, they weren't Korean players.
Yeah. Then they went sort of the hybrid for like 2 weeks or whatever it was.
Yeah, and even that, like, that was the hill that the manager or whoever, the spokesperson at the time, was like, no, we're not going all Korean, we're not going all Korean. And I think at the end of the day, I think there's two different things here. I think, first of all, like, I don't necessarily agree with, like, I'm going to pick Chris because he speaks English. Like, I want to pick Chris because he's a good Overwatch player, right? Like, and I get that there's going to be synergy and communication things, but to me, like, that's still priority is we're picking the best players, not because, like, you're not getting a benefit because you speak a certain way or you look a certain way, right? Or you're from a certain country. So get that out of the way. But like, whatever it is, I think there's two different things. One is, I think most Western orgs, they do need English to be the base language, because that's how you build story with the fans, right? Whether you need a translator in there 24/7 and you need to give them additional English lessons, whatever it is, like, that makes sense for pretty much all the orgs to me, except outside Seoul, right? Seoul, you can be Korean only, doesn't matter. You'll have a fan base. But in terms of the players itself, like, that expectation is not clear, I think, to a lot of the players. Right? Like, even though, like, okay, we talk about the Mayhem again, they're doing a great job these days. Yaki's doing content in limited English, right? Like, he's having show matches with Sideshow that are casted in English, and he's like, this is credit to their org, credit to their staff, credit to Swing Chip and Yi and all those guys there. They've explained it somehow that, this is how we engage with our NA fans, and they're learning to make it work, and they're doing a great job of that. So like, those are two different lessons though, right? Like, one is about the language in which they participated in, and then the other is like, okay, well, if we do go Korean, we got to do these extra 8 steps to make sure the players understand the responsibilities of their job, and also perform.
The other point that came out in that article, actually, and sort of talking about engaging the community, was that there was some of the sources were telling Richard, and I don't think it's any surprise, the Vancouver Titans struggled to embrace a Korean community that exists here in Vancouver. they struggled. I mean, they struggled embracing any community. But I don't know if, I'll use the Titans as an example. If the Titans simply focused on building their community based on those who can speak Korean within the Pacific Northwest, are they a successful team? I don't think they are. And that's not to knock the, Korean community. It's simply not enough. No different than if they only embrace sort of the Western community based on language, whether it be English, what have you. It's a matter of acknowledging, what it is you have access to, what's available in your plan. And that's where I think what's quite clear, and if that hasn't been as crystal clear as it should be, the Vancouver Titans plan may not have been, executed, but maybe as well thought out. Mm-hmm. It was like it's like the four steps to profit. Identify good team, sign good team wins, profit. Well, we sort of saw that happen in the first season, but the moment one of those were to fall, now you have nothing else to fall back to. You look at the Toronto Defiant, you look at the Florida Man. They're creating content and they're looking at a means to, engage a community through a means beyond the team itself. And that's where the Vancouver Titans didn't have that fallback. There was no plan B. There was no, Carcu streamer that you can create content with or, engaging fan events or even a reliance on the community, whether it be us here at RSP, the actual Titans Discord community, Rain City Runners. I mean, I can't speak for Rain City Runners. I was not intricately involved beyond sort of the first few days, a few weeks of it in existence. But I know in the early conversations, there was difficulty coordinating between the team and a supporters group that was trying to create events, including the team suddenly announcing, oh yeah, we're going to do a watch party at like the last possible minute when the Rain City Runners had already gone and arranged something. Like, again, these are things that I think ultimately the Vancouver Titans could have executed a little bit better on, but that just goes again to it's that immaturity within the organization. And I don't mean immaturity as an individual people. It's the actual business.
It's new.
Yeah. And, a note came here on the stream from Atomic Skull is like the Seattle Call of Duty team is going through some issues, the Seattle Surge, and it's quite possible that they're related to what we saw with the Vancouver Titans. I don't know enough of the Surge. I don't follow the Call of Duty League enough to suggest they're related. It's hard to look at something that's walking like a duck, talking like a duck, looking like a duck and not say it actually is. But they are in a much different structure. You have language not becoming an issue. There does seem to be a person, not a nebulous team in charge. That being, I think his name's Bob Morris, if I recall. Mm-hmm. But again, I can't get into it. I don't know it enough.
All we know is it's ducked up.
Yeah, it is ducked up. So
I've been sitting on that one.
Enough of the current Titans. Let's talk a little bit about some of the former Titans. Last week we shared that Janu had signed a long-term, and I say long-term with air quotes, contract with Washington Justice, and it was just announced, I want to say a day or two ago, that Stitch has also signed a long-term deal with the Justice. I'm a little bit confused why it took a few extra days for Stitch. I would have presumed, a deal would have been had already, but in the grand scheme of things didn't matter much because both he and Janu were on 2-week contracts and it's not like they missed any gameplay. The thing, however, was the Justice shared on Twitter pictures of them setting up the apartment. How much do you think that was done with intention?
1,000%. It's a smart move.
Oh yeah, I when I saw it, I'm like well played, and like it was, and this is the thing. Like we talked in RSP quarters, like what should player accommodations look like? There's this perspective that they need a team house. I'm old, so I'm not going to say a team house is the place it'll be, but I also accept that I don't understand the scene well enough and understand the player expectations. But from a practical perspective, where the heck are they going to get a team house here in Vancouver that's reasonably priced? Like, are they going to send the players out to the Fraser Valley?
On North Road next to the H Mart.
Right? Well, yeah, maybe. So I had suggested the possibility of like condominium apartment style, and that's simply because like the Aquilini Investment Group owns property as a developer, and they're yeah, it still costs money, but now you're left pocket right pocket arrangement. And there are some that say, oh no, that's not good because that's no different than a hotel. The Washington Justice, the apartment they had, looked relatively, I'm not going to say basic because the Vancouver Titans staying in the rooms that they were staying in at Fortius, I would argue are relatively basic, maybe more than basic. Mm-hmm. But apartments aren't a problem. And I now hearing more about the fact that they didn't have personal computers in their rooms, like that blows my mind. And I think it sort of goes back to the point, like, was Fortius ever intended to be the long-term solution? I don't think it was, but we'll never know. Or if we do know, it will be with the new roster. But yeah, props to Washington. Not only providing them apartments, getting them, justice wear or justice threads to wear, but also including the picture of all the Logitech gear available for their personal PC in their apartment to use, play, and stream from. So,
yeah, like it's extremely bittersweet for me because I would have imagined that the players would have moved on to Asian teams or at least for the remainder of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, for them to go to Washington and be signed and presumably be happy. Maybe it's too early and everybody's happy on signing day. We have to kind of wait a couple months in. And to an org that now has its own kind of small molehill of problems like that kind of stings a little bit. Yeah. I think we're happy for Janny. We're happy for Stitch, like being employed in a job that they like in today is not easy and it shouldn't be taken for granted. But I gotta say it's bittersweet, right? And it's weird seeing Janu in a Justice jersey. It's weird seeing Stitch go to the airport. And I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about it when we talk about the show match or whatever, but it sucks, dude.
Yeah, it does. The last thing about the payload is RSP news. That's right. Jack, team mascot, and Cat you occasionally see behind Omni during live streams, went under the knife. Jack himself got spayed. Was it spayed or neutered?
I think Jack is male.
Yeah, so he said neutered. Yeah,
sure.
I was going to say, and then I was all confused because, like...
Yeah.
But, rip Jack. We need F's in chat for Jack.
Cone of shame is coming through.
Yeah, the cone of shame. I mean, not that I've ever had to wear one, but I can't imagine it's good. I mean, I've seen Up.
Yeah. So exactly, it's exactly that, and Jack's a pretty small cat, so usually they have to buy a pretty big cone, and it's not a good look. Omni in chat is now saying he's all good.
Well, that's good, so we don't actually have to give F's in chat for Jack. Maybe F's in chat for Jack's former Jack.
No Jacks left to give.
Oh, well, we're going to take a short break before we get ourselves into the fray.
Back into the fray.
Oh man, if you're having to watch the live stream and watching what's going on in chat right now, Jack is still the topic of conversation, and there's some crazy things being shared about Jack and other sounds like Jack related items. But no, we're going to kick things off with the fray by talking about that show match. We had there was actually a couple of different events. So let me sort of preface, when I talk about show match, I guess I should acknowledge Sideshow and Yaki, where Sideshow challenged Yaki to a 1v1 Farah, and if he got 5 kills, he'd get a 2-week contract from the Mayhem. It was good fun. Congratulations, Sideshow. Welcome to the Overwatch League. And the subsequent show matches that took place this weekend were primarily between members of the former Runaway and the former Lunatic High. Now, I did not stay up to watch the show match. I was contemplating it. I was sort of thinking, like, do I turn it on? Do I watch? But I then fell victim to this thing called sleep and missed it. But Sam, I understood you stayed up to watch it.
If I'm talking myself up, I took one for the team because this lasted from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Well, I saw you guys were talking about it in Discord, and you would reach this point where like, do I go to sleep now or do I just sort of stay up? Like you'd reach that point where you're unsure as to what to do.
Yeah, because the sun is up. And if the sun is up, we're supposed to be up. So, but time zones aside, like this was a dream. It felt like we've hopped in the car, went back in time, and it I think the one takeaway if you didn't watch the match is that everyone had fun. Mm-hmm. For the 5 hours that everyone was sleep deprived, it was all smiles, right? Like the most powerful thing about the show match is that the result didn't even matter. Of course, these are competitive Overwatch players. In game, they are going to be competitive, right? But Lauren, a good friend of the show, and Dave Allen on Twitter in the Game House for those that don't know, she was ribbing me basically the moment it announced because she knows that I was a Lunatic High fan, and yet I'd built a relationship over the last year and a bit with all these Runaway boys. And so she was just like, you got to pick a side. You got to pick a side. You got to pick a side. And I was like, no, I don't want to pick a side. And obviously she's been like a Lunatic High fan since its inception. So she took no qualms of which side she picked, but she does have a healthy respect for Runaway itself. Mm-hmm. But it was just this perfect mix of nostalgia. The fact that they brought in OGN, which are the producers of the Apex League, which is the precursor to Overwatch League itself, to come in. They brought some veteran casters. I can't pretend to know all their names because everybody's in Korean. They did bring Wolf and Achilles to try and cast in their quarantined rooms, which had its struggles, but they did it right. Mm-hmm. And so it was a perfect blend of nostalgia, but also great Overwatch play, and also at the same time a glimpse of what could be.
Yeah.
So that's the crazy part to me is I knew the nostalgia was a given, right? You throw those names on, you don't even need to play; they can just stand there and shake hands. A lot of people are going to go home happy. The good Overwatch was a moderate surprise. So we know about the guys that are built in from the former Titans roster. You know about Haxel, you know about Stitch, you know about Rujie Hong, you know about Toby. These guys are well-known stars in the game. But we saw Kaiser do some really cool things on his Ryan lock, which he basically played all game unless he was playing Winston. We saw Bumper the first time in a very, very long time play off tank. And his Zarya, his D.Va, not bad. It's what happened to this one trick Ryan that we spent a year debating whether he's trash or he's amazing? Suddenly he just goes on Zarya and is comfortable on it just because who knows, right? At the same time, we saw Who Are You? It was there's Who Are You, who we know from NYXL, and then there's Who Are You, right? And I think a lot of that had to do with how much support Toby and Rujie Hong were giving him. And then we talk about the Grandmaster himself. We talk about Rujie Hong. He wasn't supposed to play. He basically got I'd say positively peer pressure, because peer pressure is usually a negative connotation. Yeah. I forgot about Zumba. Sorry, dude. Zumba popped off. Zumba is an owl level player, and he's a great Zarya. So props to Zumba. But back to Rujihan, like he wasn't gonna play. They were interviewing him on some stream or something like that, and they're like, dude, you gotta play. And he's like, okay, I'll call the league. I'll see if I can play. They already have a full six, and the people are like, we don't give a damn. You're gonna play. And so even going in, he was like super modest about it. He's like, I don't know, I need a break. I've been through a lot, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe I'll do one round. Dude played for all 6 matches, right? So you can tell there was genuine joy from the players. There's obviously genuine joy from the fans, even though, half of us on this side of the planet are super sleep deprived. But I know a lot of people who went back in and watched the VOD. And even like a lot of people, English speakers, were watching the Korean VOD because I think there's a level of experience that in Korean Overwatch that we haven't gotten to. Like, even though I couldn't understand, the actual verbiage they were saying, you can understand tone, you can understand excitement, you can understand who are you, right? Like you get that. You don't need translation. And I think that is a bar that Apex did set so high, and that's why Al gets so much flack, right? Because we haven't been able to match that bar. And so that was the match. And to talk about the game itself, like it was a candy store, man. Like we had dive, we had matching nano blades. I don't want to spoil everything, but we had goats. We had
wasn't there like a double Genji reflect of a fire strike that killed both? Like I don't know, I haven't seen, but I was like saw the screen capture, the kill feed where both Genjis killed each other with reflected fire strikes.
Both Genjis killed each other when they were in their nano blades, but the reflecting fire strikes from both teams, from Miro and Kaiser, got them. Yeah. So like it had everything that you would want in a show match. And it was just a play. Like you can hear the excitement in my voice, and I was like, I barely remember the game, right? You have to remember it was like 4 a.m. Yeah. So for people that are analyzing the game, like it's just exciting, and I wouldn't say it was like the highest level of Overwatch, because I think to some degree people do know it's a show match, but like the guys wanted to win, so they wanted to win, but they wanted to do it on their terms, which gets me to the hero bans. So I don't know whose idea it was. I don't know if it was from Overwatch. I don't know if it was Apex. I don't know if it was Runner. I don't know if they decided to do it like an hour before the match. But they came up with this concept of each team was going to ban one. I think it was 4 characters in all. 2 DPS, 1 tank, and 1 support from the opposing team. So for those that have no idea anything about Apex, anything about the match, and they're just listening to this for the first time, the concept is if, it's my team versus Light Force's team, I get to pick 4 characters that Light Force's team can't use. So other than that, anything is up for grabs. There was no 2-2-2 lock. There was no role lock. So we also did see things like Jaehan go from Ana to Soldier. We saw the desperation wrecking balls from DPS players coming out. Someone in chat is saying, I think it was Wolf's idea. I cannot confirm or deny. If so, props to him. But whatever it was, obviously, because this show match only took a couple weeks to prepare, it wasn't like this was planned out for a long time. It was definitely someone that said, hey, can we do this? Yeah, I think we can. We can give it a try. And the preliminary execution of it was incredible. And I say that understanding that, yes, there's nostalgia. So anything that's, you have the OGN on it, you're going to feel good about it. But and I think the most important part of, this decision is it puts strategy back into the plan, right? Like the biggest problem that we've been having with hero bans is or sorry, what do we call them? Hero pools and roll is that it feels very randomized, and the randomization will benefit a different party depending on the week. Yeah. So for players, it's hard to impossible to prepare. For coaches, you have nothing that you can tell them in terms of strategy. But for fans, and especially for casuals, like I thought the San Francisco Shock were really good. Why did they just lose to the Valiant or whatever? It's like, oh, it's because of hero pool. What's that again? right? So it didn't create for consistency. But with hero bans, now the coaching staff has control again. I'm going up against Florida Mayhem. They have probably one of the best Tracer in the world. Guess what? When we play you, you're not playing Tracer.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, there's definitely going to be ways to iterate on this so that we're not deprived of the best people playing their best characters in the world. So maybe it's like, okay, you can ban it for a match that you lose, but not for a match that you win, or something like that, or the reverse of that, whatever. But like, to me, that was very much a positive thing that seemed to spin up overnight. And you know, frankly, from the league perspective, it kind of just made, you know, it's like, you know, Apex is rightly or wrongly getting the credit for this, the OGN guys, and saying like, yo, like they did this in 2 weeks. You guys had all year, and this is the mess that you came up with. So like, that was like a very strange feeling. But I think it's something that the league definitely needs to seriously look at. I think actually 4 characters is too much. And I think but like, you know, the styles that they wanted to play for the so much, basically Echo was a no-go for most of it. May was a no-go for most of it. Nobody wanted to play Orisa, and nobody wanted to play Baptiste. Mm-hmm. So like, I think that also speaks volumes as to which characters the players themselves think are interesting. Whether they're good or great or not, or OP, I think it also kind of sheds some light into how players think. And I honestly don't think it'd be that different even if it was NA players picking the locks. Because I think at the end of the day, like what I talked about a week or 2 weeks ago, as long as one of Genji, Tracer, Widow, like those are what people want to watch. They don't want to watch the Tracer shooting a million Orisa shields, right? So and apologies to Orisa mains, but that's just how I feel, and I think that's how a lot of casual fans feel. Yeah. So it was in a pretty dark and Overwatchless week. I think it was one of the brightest spots of the season, quickly followed by Sideshow making the Overwatch League and kind of making it into a laughingstock. Yeah. So I don't know, depending on how you feel about that, that's an entirely different subject. But I think it's a one-off, because I don't think they will most likely do this again, because I think this, for a lot of the players, like Stitch, I think is on his way to Washington now, so obviously he's not going to be in Korea. Yeah, they're not going to be in Korea for another match. But like, I feel like it was kind of like a sweet send-off. Yeah. And I guess the final note I'll make before, you know, I basically talk for 10 minutes straight. But this is how you feel, right? All the time. This is a weird feeling. But the final note is, it was bittersweet as the Titans fans, because we have ex players on both sides, and I think as sweet as it was, there's always going to be that little part of like, dude, why couldn't we just make this work? Because these guys, they are really good players. And even from the very limited amount of time to promote the show match and time for after, like I can't remember who tweeted it, but someone just posted a picture of like basically both teams eating takeout food after the match. And that was like beloved content. And someone was pointing, was like, dude, imagine you couldn't promote this. Like, they're literally eating and staring and chatting with each other, and that post is going to get thousands of likes. Yeah. So like, that was very bittersweet for me.
Yeah, and you know, looking back, actually just sort of the content we've shared, one of our most liked pictures that we shared on Instagram had absolutely zero context, but it was when we were doing RSP, or rock paper scissors RPS with RSP with the team when we interviewed them. You could just see it was like a bunch of players standing around having a, you know, it was goofy. And whether or not they enjoyed what was going on, I won't claim.
Is it time that we talk about what happened? Is it time we be more transparent
with RPS versus RSP?
Yes, with what exactly happened and how we promised and underdelivered. Or rather, I promised and underdelivered.
Well, I mean, it's a Vancouver thing, right? Maybe
I'm
we
just going with the trend.
we can save that for the next episode.
Sure,
It's
we'll get
content.
Omni's side,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm actually really disappointed Omni couldn't make it because I think of our podcast, I'm always the one that hates on roll log and hates on hero pools, and he's he's the defender of it. I think he I wouldn't say he loves it. I think he has his own qualms with it, but definitely at least amongst this pool, we are on different opinions of that. So I don't really feel like saying yeah, be gone with 222, be gone with hero pools without hearing a good defense from him. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. The show match itself, as I said, I did not watch, but based on what I heard, I think it was much needed therapeutic support for Vancouver Titans fans, especially aggrieved Vancouver Titans fans, and maybe they're no longer Vancouver Titans fans. It was a great showcase of what Overwatch can be competitively. And we saw some of that the weekend before with the Florida Mayhem and really the style of play that they brought. I think there's potential. And it could be, looking at your sort of suggestion where there are must-haves. So if you're not going to go and ban or lock, but every team has to play the Genji, Widow, Tracer, a must-have. And then whatever that might be what's needed. I don't know if the hero pools are where it's at. I don't know if 222 is where it's at. And Omni currently in chat is saying he doesn't love hero pools. He loves 222. But I think, he is onto something. Because hero pools right now, they're not working. In fact, we've talked about this on previous episodes. We heard Adam talk about it. This is, someone from the management side of an organization, a very senior manager talking about it. And functionally, I think Owl proved it to themselves with the May Melee that hero pools aren't the answer. But again, we don't know what will ultimately come of it all. Other things that have been going on in the Overwatch League. So yes, Sideshow was signed to a 2-week contract with the Florida Mayhem. So I am conflicted. I like that they sort of have fun, but as sort of a showcase event, and that's the thing, is this happened so much later in the day. If this was something that occurred as part of a larger sort of weekend event, like the All-Star game or something like that, I have no problem with it. But sort of on its own as a marquee felt really weird. The 2-week contract part, I got no issue with that, except it was a complete meme. Even the Mayhem sharing the picture as they did, or Yaki just, taking the K just to ensure that it happens. It feels very, I don't know, I was going to say fake. The correlation I was going to draw to was the WWE. Except with WWE, it's scripted. But those are still, athletic people. There's still this premise that you need to be really good. This did not seem to be that. Anyhow,
I think it's two parts. One, first of all, Yaki threw.
Oh yeah, no, totally, and that.
But I think to me it's the same discussion as Zoe's cats, and I'm not trying to compare I'm not trying to compare a cat to Sideshow. I'm not trying to disrespect him as a human being.
To Bren, because Bren was making picks this season too.
Yeah. So, but I think there's two sides. I think it's great that the league is willing to have fun, and I think that's what makes esports unique, is because the demographic, not just viewers, but also the people who are running the show, they're young, right? So being young allows you to have a creativity that I think when you're 30, 40 years in the job, you're not going to take as many risks, right? So, but at the same time, the Overwatch League is also fighting for legitimacy. So when we have Zoe's cat, affecting, I don't know, whether or not Stitch plays next week, because Stitch plays Tracer and he doesn't play Soldier, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Like that makes us question whether this league is for real or not, or are you just messing around? right? So at the same token, like now we have jokes like, okay, you want to make the Overwatch League, you can grind for hours and hours and hours and hours, and hopefully, like a Shredlock or a card, you get an opportunity when an opportunity pops up, or you build a personality for yourselves and then challenge the best player in Overwatch. Hope one of them says yes, and then away you go 2 week match, 2 week, right? Like the Chipsa method or whatever.
Someone actually told me, like, well, you look at professional or traditional sports. They have, like in hockey, there's this octopus that chooses teams that win. The difference there is the octopus is choosing the team to win for entertainment purposes alone and has absolutely no effect to the game that takes place on the ice. Mm-hmm. That is truly a promotion. But to what your point is suggesting is where you have Zoe's cat, not only for a promotional perspective, here are the picks. Like, if it's one thing, oh, Zoe's cat, banned May, but unfortunately the algorithm doesn't do that. Then you can have sort of some fun banter, like, oh, Zoe's cat, understands the game better than the algorithm. But when it's the cat that impacts you're right, whether Stitch gets into a match or not, that's far too hokey for my liking, and probably not something we'll see.
Not a great place to work if my next week's performance at my job depended on like my coworker's cat.
Yeah,
that's literally what's happening.
Anywho, I don't know what we'll see moving forward, and I'm not knocking the creativity, the desire to do things that are different, but sometimes just for the sake of being different isn't a good enough reason to do. What else has been going on in the World of Overwatch League? Well, the Toronto Defiant have announced that Numlocked is their new tank coach. So, first and foremost, this was shared if you happen to be watching the latest episode from our friends over at CA Overwatch by Adam. Like, he actually shared it with them and then apologized to his social team if it wasn't something he was allowed to share. But that was pretty cool to see, where a local content creator is given the opportunity to be a conduit to share that information. Note to the Vancouver Titans, we record Tuesday nights. If ever you want to go and share something that has to go live on Wednesday, you do not have to wait to simply announce it on Wednesday. We will do that with you if you'd like. But no, it was pretty cool. Whether or not, Numlocked is just a tank coach or gets into actual Overwatch League action, possible. I don't know. 2-week contract. I mean, anything can occur.
I mean, they now have 2 ex-player coaches, right? Or I guess Mangachu's not even an ex-player. He's a player coach.
Yeah,
like Bill Russell and Michael Jordan in Space Jam.
Yeah. And Space Jam, I understand, is getting a remake this time with.
Yeah, it's weird. It's cool for kids, but it's also like it's our nostalgia, right? Like, kids that are now going to watch the Looney Tunes show, they don't understand this. Yeah. So I think they need their own thing.
Yeah. It'll be Space Jam with Paw Patrol. The last thing is that Overwatch has been updated today. A patch got pushed out to put in a new experimental mode that had Genji buffed, Moira sort of half and half, and an Echo nerfed. So the Genji buff is minor. He's getting a slight bump in his primary damage. You have the ability to cancel his deflect, so you don't sort of stand there looking like an idiot as they wait for it to cool down and dome you. You now have, much like with May, when you go an ice block, you can now try to time it for something else. The Moira nerf buff, so the nerf was on her prime or her damage or secondary, so that's been slightly reduced, but then the buff has been on the healing side. Now, this one I find interesting. I've recently discovered, and I say recent, but it's probably in the last while, when you're an actual healing Moira, you can generate ult charge like phenomenally fast. And if you're now going to actually push out more heals with this buff, like her getting coalescence constantly is going to be all sorts of weird. But hey, for some reason or another, I guess the metrics indicated this was something they wanted to look into. And then Echo is getting a slight nerf where her essentially laser is the distance to which it actually has impact is being reduced. Now it melts. Like, I'm a Reinhardt. I hate Echo. There's nothing I can do to get away from her when she's in the air. I genuinely wonder what the distance between a hammer swing and the laser update is. Does this bring her within range? Because if that's the case, I can easily down an Echo who's trying to melt me. So
There's something satisfying about that, though. So, like, for those that actually follow us, I recently hopped back on the solo queue Overwatch train as I waited for Valorant to actually show up. But like, Echo's kind of satisfying. I mean, she's not the easiest player to play, and she's not the easiest player to play against. But she's satisfying. Moira, on the other hand, like, I have very mixed feelings about Moira, because on a solo queue, honestly, sometimes you just have to go Moira, not even to heal your team, just to heal yourself. Because I play a lot of quick play classic. Nobody plays healers. Everybody dies.
So my like with Moira, I'll use an example. As I actually did my competitive placements for this season. I got my tank placement. I'm silver. Amazing.
Congrats.
And my support placement, bronze. That's where I belong. I'm not even going to try my damage because queue times are too long. One of the struggles I had was that when I was doing my support placements is almost every match there was a hardlock Moira. And nearly every one of those hardlock Moiras was a DPS Moira. So that meant I was then a solo heal. And because I'm solo queue in a comp, I then have a Pharah, a Genji, or a Tracer. Any one of those three shows up in the team composition. I'm almost guaranteed to have a dive tank of some sort. In fact, it might even be a wrecking ball. And then I have like a shield, so a Ryan, a Sigma, an Orisa, another DPS who, generally Widow or Hanzo. And one of my struggles, I don't like Mercy. I hate Mercy. I just can't play her. I find her so boring.
Yeah, because in a shooting game, she doesn't shoot.
And then so if I can't go with Moira to heal, I'll go Anna. Now, the struggle here is Anna is that I can't go and pop that many, disparate directions. Yes, I can sort of shoot, but when you're Tracer or you're Genji and you're bouncing every which way, it's very hard for me to track. On top of that, as I'm trying to heal you, our main tanks are probably getting lit up. So then I'm having to go and, change. So it's just so frustrating. It was interesting. One day in comp, people were telling me I was a Smurf and I'm ruining the game. So I actually took that as a compliment.
Always.
Like, if you think I'm Smurfing, my goodness. And then there was the person who told me I was the worst Anna, that I should uninstall the game, and other such unpleasantries.
Mm-hmm.
And I sad to say I did not install the game. I'm still playing as Anna, and I honestly meant it when I said I am so sorry. I will continue to practice my Anna so I can become a better player.
It's hard to be Anna solo, and honestly, if you are playing Anna at a level where you're basically giving main healer level support, you probably wouldn't be playing at the elo you're playing in, wouldn't be playing with the team comps that you're playing with. So it's like, I don't want to go back into the 222 lock conversation, but I think one of the stronger arguments for 222 is that people need it in lower elo, and that's where I'm basically like, no, anytime there's a lever from a support, you've basically thrown the match, and there's no way to recover from that.
Anywho.
Yep.
Yeah, it is, but it is. So, we thought this was going to be a nice short episode, and I'm looking at the record time here, and we've gone past an hour. It's amazing how we can talk about, a whole lot of nothing. This probably explains why last week's episode was over 2 hours long. So if you happen to listen to that entire episode last week, thank you so much. Our hope, actually, just on that note, I thought, Adam provided a lot of candid conversation and context that maybe we as Vancouver Titans fans miss. It was a really nice conversation. I hope we can get him on again. But I, also meant what I was saying when I broke the big news that we're looking to get more guests. We actually had hoped to have someone lined up for this episode. Things unfortunately fell through, but that's not to suggest we're not looking for other guests to get on. We're going to be talking about all sorts of different topics. We're going to have people from the Overwatch scene, outside of the Overwatch scene, esports, because, again, we want to we want to build up, the community that follows us the right way. And let's be real, there's no way we can continue to survive the tough times we have here in Vancouver as a Titans fan if we don't look for other avenues to explore. Maybe we have more episodes where we have to throw on the red and black. For those of you who don't actually see in RSP Discord, we actually were showcased on a website not even related to esports. It's actually a web app that I use to create some of the audiograms. Headliner. They actually showcased the message that we shared, and they actually complimented us on how visually appealing the red and the black was. And
they like the red and the black. Yeah. We should just talk about Valorant.
I figured you would not go and say talk about Toronto.
All I'm saying is you do one of those headliner apps every single week practically, and the only time we've ever gotten showcased is when we changed our colors.
Yeah, from the blue and green to the red and black.
So maybe it's means something.
Well, it did. It did stand out. Like I will admit, I might have to explore sort of the color combinations I use, especially when you do your top fives. Which speaking of which, I need to get you to do one of those magical top fives.
Okay, top 5 Valorant players you can use. Jet, and Jet.
Thank you. That'll be a quick 10-second audiogram. But I think, for us, back to the content of the podcast, this is something we want to do. And our hope is that we'll be able to structure it in such a way that when we do our live streams, that they might also be able to join us. It's still new to me, so please bear with us, but I can assure you from a podcast perspective, we'll always be able to find ways to get them more involved.
Cool.
Anywho, we are at the end of an episode. Sam, any final thoughts or words of wisdom you want to share with everyone listening in?
I think we have one more week of no Overwatch to go, right? So,
or at least one, yeah.
And Valorant has globally released. And Omni's not here to tell me off, so fill in the blank.
Play Overwatch. Final words from me. Stay safe, everyone. I think that's what's most important, is please stay safe. I know in RSP Cord, people have said sort of what they're up to and doing, and I fully support everyone's right to ensure their voice is heard and to ensure that they can support the community as they are. All I ask is that you stay safe. But I do respect as well the risks that many of you do take on a daily basis for a variety of reasons. It's just I wish everyone to be well. As far as our podcast is concerned, though, we do ask if you can to review each and every episode that we share, review the podcast, let others know how we are. Now, word of mouth advertising is by far the most powerful form that exists, and that's nothing to knock at, but one of the ways that you can also broadcast your love and passion of the podcast is by going to podchaser.com/readysetpwn, dropping a review there, sharing that review on social. I also guarantee that if you review this on Podchaser, I will engage and reply. And that's above and beyond us reading your review on every episode, which is what we do when a review comes in. But if you also want to provide a review where we actually share your voice in our podcast, there are 2 ways to go about that. One, going to voicelink.fm/readysetpwn, or by calling us or sending us a text message at 1-604-409-3324. That is 1-604-409-3324. And one thing I also have started mentioning is just different ways you can support the podcast. One of them is by letting others know that we are there and talking to your friends about us, the communities you're part of. We want to be that premier podcast that you can come to, not only for Vancouver Titans news, but to learn more about the Overwatch League and ultimately just enjoy being part of the community. But I do want to single out those who've elected to support us beyond, simply taking part in the conversation. Our members of the RSP patronage group, who not only get access to sort of a special channel within Discord, but are doing so by providing us, a monthly contribution through Patreon, and that's patreon.com/ReadySetPalm. Or those of you who subscribe to us here on Twitch. Again, whether it be through Twitch Prime or an actual monthly subscription, or for anyone who's ever, donated through bits on Twitch. That support goes a long way. Podcasting comes with a cost, and ultimately it's a cost that I'm more than willing to bear. But the benefit of having some of those costs covered is just allows us to explore other avenues, one of which is the means to go and get the setup so that we can come to you live each and every week, and as well bring on some of the guests that we do. So we essentially take all of that support you provide and put it directly back into the podcast. So thank you again for tuning in, those who are watching our live stream right now, and as well everyone who tunes in each and every week to the podcast through auditory means. You can find us each and every podcast app that's out there, and if for some reason you can't, let me know, and I will be more than able to get RSP on whatever the application happens to be. So on behalf of the Missing in Action Omni at Omni Strife and his cat Jack, Sam at Another Sam Chan, and myself, Chris at Lightforce, I'm going to sign off with those magical two words, catchphrase.